Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the genesis of flow, energy, matter, and stewardship. We're going to dive deep into the absolute genius of Earth's operating system, and honestly, the absolutely crucial role you play in it. If you've ever found yourself wondering how our planet manages to keep ticking day after day, year after year, century after century without totally running out of fuel, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're breaking down the literal mechanics of survival.
So, let's kick things off with a massive foundational mystery. Literally every single living thing on this planet is constantly using up energy and consuming matter. And think about the sheer scale of that for a second. A single blue whale, it can eat up to 4 tons of krill in just one day. And an average human will consume roughly 35 tons of food over their lifetime. Now multiply that constant consumption by the billions of organisms eating, drinking, breathing, and moving every single second of every single day. How in the world is the planetary pantry not completely empty by now? To solve this mystery, the source material for today's explainer, the heroesmartacademy curriculum, zooms out to establish a very specific worldview. It relies on a biblical framework, specifically citing Psalm 24, which posits that the Earth is a perfectly managed, highly intentional system belonging to a creator. By establishing the planet not just as some random rock hurtling through the void, but as a deliberately designed environment, the source text sets up its core thematic argument. We, as human beings, have a fundamental job as caretakers and stewards of this whole shebang.
Which brings us to Earth's perfect operating system. Okay, let's dive right into this blueprint and look at the actual biological mechanics keeping things running. Now, there are 2 main gears keeping this entire machine running seamlessly: energy and matter. And there's a stark, honestly fascinating contrast in how these 2 vital gears actually behave. It's the dichotomy that drives all life. On one hand, we have energy flow. Energy acts as a one-way street. It moves strictly through systems and is eventually lost into the atmosphere as heat. It always has to be replenished. On the other hand, we have matter cycles. Matter is the ultimate zero-waste process. It's endlessly cycled, repurposed, and reused. It is never lost. Without both the flowing energy and the looping matter working together in tandem, life simply couldn't exist. Let's look closer at energy, the one-way flow. We're going to zoom in on that first half of the equation to see exactly why energy is on a strictly one-way journey. Imagine a sprawling meadow. The journey always starts with a producer, let's say a blade of grass, quietly capturing the sun's rays and turning them into usable energy. Then along comes a hungry grasshopper looking for a quick lunch. It munches on the grass, taking that solar energy right into its own body. But it's a tough world out there, right? So it quickly becomes lunch for a passing frog. That frog is then swallowed by a snake, which eventually gets scooped up by a soaring hawk, our top predator. What we're looking at is a direct linear relay race of energy transfer from the sun straight up the food chain.
Now, the crucial scientific takeaway from this linear journey is that the amount of energy absolutely does not stay the same as it moves from the grass all the way up to the hawk. You can think of energy transfer kind of like carrying a leaky bucket of water up a flight of stairs. At every single step, every time an animal digests a meal, runs away from a predator, or just sits there existing and breathing, heat escapes. It splashes right out of the bucket. By the time that bucket reaches the hawk at the very top of the stairs, the usable energy has decreased significantly. And that is exactly why energy is a one-way flow. It constantly leaks out of the system as heat and has to be continually replenished by the sun.
Next up, matter, the ultimate recycling. If energy is the fuel that burns away as heat, matter is the engine hardware itself, building a perfectly self-sustaining loop. Unlike that one-way, leaky bucket of energy, matter endlessly loops. The water cycle is a brilliant example of this, with evaporation from oceans, condensation into clouds, and precipitation as rain. And here is a wild fact to put that into perspective. The water molecules in the glass you drank from this morning, they are the exact same water molecules that a Tyrannosaurus Rex might have gulped down millions of years ago. I mean, no way, right? But it's true. It's the ultimate proof that matter is never lost, it just brilliantly changes form to keep the whole planetary system hydrated.
Similarly, the carbon cycle elegantly and continuously balances our atmosphere. You can trace the journey of a single carbon atom to see this in action. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by plants, right? So it gets exhaled in the breath of a wandering deer, drifts through the forest air, and is absorbed by the broad leaves of an oak tree to help it grow. Eventually, another animal eats those leaves, and the carbon is released right back into the air through respiration, or maybe when the organic matter eventually decays or burns. It's an elegant, continuous loop where carbon is endlessly borrowed, utilized, and safely returned to the environmental library.
But this brings us to breaking the cycle. This is a critical turning point in the source material's outline because we aren't just passive observers in this system. We are active, highly impactful participants.
Earth is essentially a perfectly engineered smart house. The plumbing works flawlessly through the water cycle, the internal heating is balanced by the carbon cycle, and the solar panels provide a steady stream of energy. So, what happens when we break the machine? What actually happens to this incredibly delicate balance when human beings, basically the tenants of this smart house, start smashing the appliances?
Well, human actions have a profound capacity to bottleneck these natural systems. Take agricultural runoff or chemical dumping, which pollutes vital water sources and chokes out aquatic life. Or consider the aggressive, large-scale burning of fossil fuels, which takes millions of years' worth of stored carbon and dumps it back into the atmosphere all at once, totally overwhelming the natural carbon cycle. Even overfishing massive sections of the ocean removes key players from that energy food chain we talked about earlier. When we disrupt the recycling process, we actively damage the climate and the overall health of the ecosystem.
The source text emphasizes that understanding these mechanics is absolutely vital, and it connects directly to our own survival. This isn't just about abstract science or saving a patch of distant forest. It's about the agriculture that puts food on your dinner table tonight. Mismanaging these flows and cycles doesn't just cause a minor hiccup in nature, it causes entire systems to collapse. Literally total mechanical breakdown. If the biological machine breaks down, the grocery store shelves empty out. We simply have to know how the machine works in order to keep it running.
Which leads us to education, morality, and peace. This brings us right to the core philosophy of the heroesmartacademy curriculum. Having looked closely at the science of the system, the text now turns its focus to the character of the steward. The curriculum presents a really powerful central thesis here. Education without morality will hurt. The authors argue that knowing the intricate science of the water and carbon cycles is fantastic, but it's only half the equation. According to the source material, being highly intelligent and supposedly educated is basically useless if humanity continues making bad, self-serving choices that actively harm the planet. Science merely tells us how the cycles work mechanically, but the curriculum argues that morality is what must guide how we actually treat them in practice.
To find this ethical balance, the source material turns to a biblical foundation, specifically Romans chapter 8, which promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. The curriculum posits that by keeping our minds spiritually grounded, humanity can shift away from acting like destructive, reckless tenants. Instead, the text suggests that by pairing scientific literacy with biblical mindfulness, people can become thoughtful caretakers, ultimately finding a deep, real sense of peace in how they interact with the natural world around them.
So what does this all mean for us? I'll leave you with the final thought that this curriculum explicitly asks its students to ponder. What is the point of deeply understanding Earth's perfect systems if we don't have the moral compass required to protect them? The source challenges you to really consider how you will use both your scientific education and your moral choices to be a better steward of this incredible, life-sustaining planet moving forward. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and we'll let you take that profound question with you into your day.